Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 6 2021 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this week, it was a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde week in terms of both my against the spread and straight up picks. I had two wildly different results in both categories. So this week so far against the spread, I went an abysmal 5-10. Which equals 33.3%. Though straight up, I am 11-4, which equals 73.3%. And I will remind everybody once again, I am taking the Baltimore Ravens tonight, -7. The Baltimore Ravens straight up to close out Week 5. But for my against the spread picks, let me just say, it was a crazy week, just like all NFL weeks are. There were so many teams that I thought under and overperformed expectations. There were missed field goal opportunity after missed field goal opportunity in the Packers-Bengals game. The Texans with Davis Mills throwing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Only he and Russell Wilson are the only two rookie quarterbacks to throw for 303 TDs on a Bill Belichick defense. The Lions, after just being abysmal through a majority of the game, clamping down on defense to get the game-tying touchdown from DeAndre Swift, and then the 2-point conversion to Darryl Hodge to go up 17-16. For only Greg Joseph, who missed a 49-yard field goal later in the game that should have iced the game and probably could have given me the cover, and makes a 54-yarder to win. And the Lions are the first team in NFL history to have 2 games to where they lost on 50-plus yard field goals at the Horn. Shout out to Half Moon's Picks. I feel very sorry for all Lions fans. That is brutal to watch, and even as a Ravens fan that benefited from that circumstance 2 weeks ago. So that's how all my picks kind of went wonky. I thought the Giants game, I thought I had a pretty good shot. The Giants were usually close, but then Andrew Thomas went down, Saquon Barkley went down, Kenny Golladay went down, Daniel Jones went down. All those offensive injuries really piled up by the end, and the Cowboys were just dominating and kicking their rear ends from that moment on. Dak Prescott with another great game, 3 TDs, two total turnovers. Ezekiel Elliott having another 100-plus yard rushing day and 2 total touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper catching big touchdowns. And the Cowboys were just dominant from that moment. But also, I thought the Giants really couldn't pay attention to the game after all those injuries went down. So they, and then just for some of my other against the spread, or my picks, the Bears game, I didn't well, after what happened late in the week on last week with John Gruden and the emails that came out regarding his thoughts on the 2011 NFL lockout. That kind of, I thought that was going to mess with the team, but I also just didn't expect Derek Carr to play his worst game of the year. The Bears defense clamped down on Jacobs. Darren Waller, he couldn't get a connection with him all game. And Justin Fields did enough with his legs and his arm. I hope he's okay for the rest of the year. Matt Nagy said yesterday that he hyperextended his knee when he went out of the game for a little bit. And Andy Dalton had to come in for a couple snaps. But that was a shocking one. Broncos Steelers, which was my worst pick of the week, just because in the sense I told everybody last week when I made my video, I had Pittsburgh winning initially, but then when I saw Teddy Bridgewater was starting, I thought that Teddy would have outplayed Ben Roethlisberger, and I was wrong. So I had that pick right all the way up before Sunday. I changed it, and it bit me in the rear end. So that goes to tell you, everybody right there, sometimes trust your gut. I didn't, and it bit me in the end. And yeah, and then the Eagles-Panthers. Sam Darnold throws 3 picks in the second half that chokes a 15-3 lead at home to an Eagle team that didn't even run for another 100 yards. Jalen had a horrible interception and a really weak maneuver when the snap got botched. Not the snap part, but when he went into the end zone, and he doesn't even, or he tries to Cam Newton kind of, and he limps up with his hand, and he goes, or like he just kind of touched it very lightly, which gave him a safety. And they were able to overcome that and win the game. And it gave me a lot of respect for the Eagles, and it made me question a lot about the Panthers moving forward, especially with Sam Darnold. But that's how my 5-10 week ended up, as weird and as awkward as it was. Because of just crazy nonsense like that. But now overall for the year against the spread and straight up, I am 35-43-1 against the spread, which equals to about 45%, and straight up I am now 49-30, which equals 62%. So against the spread, my goal of 52% seems pretty lofty now at this point. I'm now going to just shoot for 500 with how I've been picking. Hopefully with all these games coming up and some decisions, I'm able to maintain a level of consistency, or just hope that these teams hold on to spreads or maintain consistently covering spreads for the rest of the year. And straight up, it was definitely my biggest increase of the week in terms of overall percentage. I was at about 59.6 when last week started. Now I'm up to 62. And now with the bye season coming up from weeks 6 to 14, there's going to be at least 2 teams on bye every week for the next 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, next 9 weeks of the season. So there's going to be less room for error to play with moving forward. So hopefully this significant increase will continue throughout the year. And since I said, like I just said, it is bye season, so the first 4 teams that have a bye are the 2 teams that played an international game, and the Saints and the 49ers. So that equals up to the Falcons, the Saints, the Jets, and the San Francisco 49ers all have byes this week. So if you have Calvin Ridley, Cordero Patterson, Matt Ryan, James Winston, Alvin Kamara, the Saints defense, Michael Thomas, Marquez Callaway, Zach Wilson, Corey Davis, Keelan Cole, the Jets defense, Matt Amendola, Trey Lance, the Niners running backs, the Niners defense, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. If you have any of those players on your fantasy teams, bench them because they will not be playing this week as the bye season begins. And now I will go into my picks for the week. So this Thursday, when the 4-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers travel to Philadelphia to take on the 2-3 Philadelphia Eagles, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 7-point favorites in this game. I like Tampa Bay here -7, and Tampa Bay straight up. Then the next game, in the second straight week of an international game playing in London at Tottenham Stadium, the 1-4 Miami Dolphins travel to take on the 0-5 Jacksonville Jaguars in their, for the first time since 2019, due to the pandemic. The 2020 international games were canceled. To play in their yearly annual home game, the 0-5 Jacksonville Jaguars. The Miami Dolphins are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I like Miami here -3.5, and Miami straight up. And then on Sunday, when the 4-1 Green Bay Packers travel to Chicago to take on the 3-2 Chicago Bears, the Green Bay Packers are 4.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Green Bay Packers here to win straight up, but I'm going to take Chicago +4.5. Then the next game, when the 3-2 Cincinnati Bengals travel to Detroit to take on the 0-5 Detroit Lions, the Cincinnati Bengals are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I like Cincinnati here -3.5, and Cincinnati straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-4 Houston Texans travel to the 1-4 or 2-3 Indianapolis Colts, the Indianapolis Colts are 10-point favorites in this game. Give me the Indianapolis Colts here to win straight up, but I'm going to take the Houston Texans +10.5. Then the next game, when the 4-1 Los Angeles Rams travel to New York to take on the 1-4 New York Giants, the Los Angeles Rams are 10.5-point favorites in this game. One of the biggest spreads of the weekend, if not the biggest spread of the whole weekend. I am going to lay those points, so give me the Los Angeles Rams here -10.5, and the Los Angeles Rams straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-3 Kansas City Chiefs travel to Washington to take on the 2-3 Washington football team, the Kansas City Chiefs are 6.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Kansas City Chiefs here -6.5, and the Kansas City Chiefs straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-3 Minnesota Vikings travel to Carolina to take on the 3-2 Carolina Panthers, this game is a pick-em on the line, dead even. So I am going to take, in what people might say a slight upset, I'm going to take the Minnesota Vikings here to go into Carolina and win on the road to beat the Carolina Panthers against the spread and straight up. And then the next game, when the 4-1 Los Angeles Chargers travel to Baltimore to take on the 4-1 or 3-2 Baltimore Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I'm going to take an upset here. I'm going to take the Los Angeles Chargers to go into Baltimore and against the spread at +3.5 to beat the Baltimore Ravens to win that game. Then the next game, when the 5-0 Arizona Cardinals travel to Cleveland to take on the 3-2 Cleveland Browns, just like with Chargers Ravens, I think the wrong team is favored here. I think it is a big steal if you can get the Cardinals on the money line with points and you get to have points to win. I think the Cardinals win this game outright. So give me the Arizona Cardinals here +3 and the Arizona Cardinals straight up. Then the next game, when in the bounce back game, you could basically call it the Arkansas Ole Miss game for this week. just like with Ole Miss and Arkansas this past Saturday, both losing to Georgia in pretty convincing fashion. When the 3-2 Las Vegas Raiders travel to Denver to take on the 3-2 Denver Broncos, this game will basically determine which team's going to have probably a playoff spot and which one is going to probably be fighting playoff elimination. The Denver Broncos are 3-point favorites in this game. I think this game is so close with everything that's going on with injuries and expectations and controversies. So I'm going to take the Denver Broncos to win the game straight up, but I'm hedging my bet here. I'm going to take the Las Vegas Raiders +3 on the line. I really couldn't think of a determined winner. I'll explain it later, but yeah, I have the Denver Broncos winning straight up, but I'll take the Las Vegas Raiders +3. Then the next game, when the 4-1 Dallas Cowboys travel to New England to take on the 2-3 New England Patriots, the Dallas Cowboys are 3.5 point favorites in this game. I like Dallas here -3.5, and Dallas straight up. And then the next game on Sunday Night Football, when the 2-3 Seattle Seahawks travel to Pittsburgh to take on the 2-3 Pittsburgh Steelers, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 4-point favorites in this game. Give me Pittsburgh here -4 and Pittsburgh straight up. And then finally, in a rematch from last year in the one of the first Tuesday Night Football games, when the 4-1 Buffalo Bills travel to Tennessee to take on the 3-2 Tennessee Titans, the Buffalo Bills are 3.5 point favorites in this game. I like Buffalo here -3.5 and Buffalo straight up. All right, so time for my quick thoughts on each game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Philadelphia Eagles. This is one to where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers yesterday looked sensational. Tom Brady threw for over 400 yards and 5 touchdowns with no picks. He's actually now has the most 5 touchdown games, tied with Drew Brees. And 4 of those 5 games he's had with 400-plus yards and 5 touchdowns has come after the age of 40, which is remarkable to me. Just looking at Tom Brady, and it seems like he is the Benjamin Button of the NFL. He just keeps getting younger and more effective as a quarterback as he ages. That shouldn't happen. And I thought the Bucs' rush defense was fantastic. Myles Gaskin and Malcolm Brown, Alvin Samad, and I know I messed that one running back's name up. My apologies. They couldn't get the ground game going. Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, the 2 highest paid corners in the National Football League, were getting toasted by Mike Evans, Antonio Brown. Cameron Brake got a couple nice receptions. Leonard Fournette ran for 125 yards. Like, the Bucs team looked in absolute perfect form against the Dolphins team that Brady's always had some, frustrations with throughout time playing in his New England days. For Philadelphia, I have to give the defense a tremendous amount of credit. 3 interceptions on Sam Darnold. They had lost, I think I just read, they had lost 11 or 12 straight games where they were down by 12 points at any point. Jalen Hurts was able to come back and get a couple nice touchdown drives going at the end. His legs were really effective in terms of being able to move chains with his feet. And that last sequence for the Eagles, it was really nice to finally see the Eagles commit to the run game. 4 or 5 straight run plays that ended the game for Jalen to knee it out. So kudos to the Eagles. And Jonathan Gannon deserves the gold star, while Nick Sirianni should be thankful that he got off the hook due to Steven Nelson and Darius Slay's 2 interceptions for 3 total turnovers. The Dolphins had allowed a turnover in 26 straight games before playing Tampa, and they ended up getting that streak broken. And I think this is why I'm also going to take Tampa. I think that, you could argue, oh, this is great for Sirianni. He really can't run the ball. He doesn't really like to run the ball. And the Bucs secondary is awful with all the injuries to Murphy Bunting. Jamel Dean would come back. They have Richard Sherman up at age 35. But Carlton Davis is out for the next 2 games at least due to IR for a quad injury. And the Eagles have, receivers in Gainwell, Quez Watkins, Jalen Reagor, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith. They have, enough receivers, and they've shown through the offensive scheme that if they have enough time and pressure, that Jalen can make plays with his feet, and the receivers can move the chains on a pretty consistent way. Though the issue for the Eagles is over the last 2 games, they've had 3 touchdowns taken away by offensive pass interference plays. I guess for this game it didn't matter, but it definitely would have mattered in the beginning, so this game might have been much closer than people were giving it credit for. But I'm also taking Tampa Bay because I'm going to use this kind of theory. I think I heard Tom Brady recently say this. The 2 teams he likes to beat up the most are the New York Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles. Why is that? Because Tom Brady's 3 Super Bowl losses came to those 3 teams. I do want to see how Levante David is going to be active or not. He suffered an injury in the game, and he was pretty much holding his shoulder. Really couldn't be that effective the rest of the way through. But I think the Eagles, if they're going to try to run the ball, or I think Sirianni's going to try to run it a bit too much, and he's not going to do anything. I just don't think Jalen and Tom, with their histories and talent they have, the Eagles secondary doesn't have enough corners and safeties to cover all the Bucs receivers. Brady does have a thumb injury, which will be interesting, but I feel like for Tom, and then this should be a nice, easy way to kind of get a nice mini bye by beating an Eagle team that kind of stole a game against Carolina and has been a little bit better than you thought. But I just think, again, short week, Thursday Night Football, Brady's motivation in Philadelphia, more talent around him. The Eagles' offensive line is disintegrated, so the Bucs pass rush should be able to get through in a better way than Carolina, and the Bucs win. And also, again, Tampa going into Philadelphia before the 2002 NFC title game, it's happened before. So that's why I like Tampa Bay here -7 and Tampa Bay straight up. The next game, the Miami Dolphins over the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is one to where I am taking Miami because Jacksonville just doesn't seem interested in anything Urban Meyer is doing or selling. Of course, everybody that's a football fan understands what's happened earlier last Thursday after their game to the Bengals. Urban decides to go to a local bar, and he ends up in a compromised position with another woman, and there's all these questions, this frustration, and Urban looks despondent, and he doesn't know how to really handle a crisis. And then they go up against Jackson, they go up against Tennessee, and Henry runs for 130 yards. James Robinson, the best player they have on that entire team, gets another 140 yards, and it makes you really think, why did they draft Travis Etienne in the first place? And I just think, without that being said, they've lost 20 straight, so they have this mentality of, they don't know what a win's felt like, and for a lot of those guys, they haven't felt like what a win's been like for over a year. And you look at their schedule, they really only have a 2-game stretch where I believe they play the Texans and Jets in back-to-back weeks to have a genuine chance to win a game. Because honestly, with how the Jags have been playing, how lifeless they look, some of the injuries they've had to deal with, I think this Jags team could go 0-18. I'm sorry, 0-17. Which would get Urban Meyer fired, and it would completely blow up the Jags' plans of what they really thought Urban Meyer had. And I also understand the Jags, again, they've been in London every year since about 2011, 2012. They've pretty much signed a lease with England to play at least one home game a year there. So they may know the customs and the mentality and the expectations and the field conditions better than the Dolphins. But the Dolphins, I just think, are a better team, especially if Tua Tagovailoa can come back. And I think, Brian Flores said, without any setbacks, Tua should be able to come off IR in Week 6. And I think with him and those weapons, going against a much weaker Jags defense, they'll use Salvin Ahmed, Malcolm Brown, and Myles Gaskin to run the ball effectively. And I think Tua will make some more consistent throws to guys like Mike Gesicki, Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle. I think all those guys will get more involved when Tua comes back in the lineup this week after suffering that rib injury in Week 2. Could the Jags win this game? Absolutely. The Jags, most of those Jags know this environment. They know the expectations, and the Jags, for the most part, have gotten better for the most part through the first 4 weeks up to yesterday, and I think they'll play a better game against Miami just due to the familiarity. But I just think with everything going on with the Jags internally in the locker room and what the Jags have talent-wise and what I've seen, I'm going to take the Dolphins, better coached, better quarterback, more consistent, and Miami is more desperate for a win, where the Jags, they're just trying to, salvage what they have and see what they have in Trevor Lawrence moving forward before they consider firing Urban Meyer or not. So that's why I like the Miami Dolphins here, -3.5, and the Miami Dolphins straight up. The next game, the Green Bay Packers over the Chicago Bears. This game, to me, comes down to the fact that I don't think Mason Crosby, who had made 27 straight field goals before the fourth quarter overtime fiasco where he missed 3 straight, I don't think that's going to happen again. I think the Packers usually tend to play well against the Bears, and I think that, for me, with Justin Fields, I think the Packers' defense is a bit better. The Jair Alexander story is a really big one because he's probably out for the year. He's going to be on IR for the next 2 weeks while they determine if he needs surgery. If he needs surgery, then he's out for the year. I would take the surgery because I feel like the Packers, they can win a lot of games about how easy their schedule was looking and lightening up after, obviously, the game against Cincinnati. And I think the Packers, Rodgers played this Bears defense before. He's beaten Trubisky a good amount of times. Khalil Mack is dealing with a foot injury. Akeem Hicks couldn't play. And I think Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon will have a bigger impact on the game due to those big defensive line being questionable at the very least to play next week against the Packers. But I think with the Bears defense, and this is why I took Chicago was 4.5, the Packers don't know what Justin Fields can do either. Justin Fields definitely looked more, prepared. He looks confident, and I think, again, he could very much be like Joe Burrow in the sense that the Packers they sleep on Justin Fields a little bit since it's only his, third overall start, second official since he's been named the starter by Nagy. I really think the Bears could hang in, kind of like what the Giants supposed to do about the injuries. But at the end of the day, this is Green Bay. Green Bay's been on a terror and a consistent roll throughout the last few weeks. It's taken 2 Mason Crosby field goals to win. At the end of the day, Aaron Rodgers will take winning ugly and losing pretty every single time. And I think the Packers get another ugly but decent feeling of win over a Bear team that looks better defensively. Matt Nagy looks like more what he's doing. And I like what Damian Williams and Khalil Herbert bring in the running back room. But I just think the Packers and Rodgers are too good to compete against Chicago and not expect the Packers to win this game. So that's why I like Green Bay here to win straight up at Chicago Bears plus 4.5. The next game, the Cincinnati Bengals over the Detroit Lions. I am taking the Cincinnati Bengals here because I just think the Bengals have been clearly the more consistent and dominant team throughout the year. The Lions to me they're not an 0-5 football team because they've had at least 2 or 3 moments to where they could tie or they should have won at least 2 games. And this should be more of a competitive test for Detroit to see how they measure up against the young Bengals team. But with everything going on with the Bengals, all the frustration, anger, and of how the Bengals have been playing, because the Bengals defense has been dominant. They got a couple sacks on Rodgers. They got an interception on Aaron Rodgers. I thought Joe played one of his best games at 2 picks. They were tough, but I understood why he was going to make those decisions at that point in the game. He was trying to win it off a field goal. But at the end of the day, I am going to take the Cincinnati Bengals here because I feel like, again, they have a more complete receiving core. Joe Burrow is playing better than Jared Goff, and I just think with the offensive line injuries, especially to Penei Sewell and Frank Ragnarok, their center, I think those 2 injuries are going to really come into play, playing against a very motivated and hungry Bengals defensive line. So that's why I like Cincinnati here, minus 3.5. It's Cincinnati straight up. The next game, the Indianapolis Colts over the Houston Texans. This is one to where I am taking the better quarterback to win this game. This is very much like Dolphins-Colts, Colts-Texans. I think the Texans can compete with the Colts in a variety of ways. That they just did it against Belichick, like I said earlier. Threw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. And the way I just view the Colts is they, even with a 1-4 start, which they can be facing tonight, they are not out of this division by a mile because the Texans aren't very good, the Jags aren't very good, and the Titans seem to be up and down through most of the year. So the Colts still have an opportunity to win this division, even if it's as dreadful as a start as they could be facing. With the Houston Texans, okay, what I see with the Houston Texans is a team that Davis Mills, after all that trash talking and all that frustration you saw through the first 2 weeks, he put up his best game as a pro. And even if Tyrod Taylor, who is eligible to come off the IR, can come back, I think Davis or Tyrod could compete with the Colts with the roster they have. That's the one thing about David Kelly that, you've seen that, his team still believes in him and believes in what the Texans are trying to do to move forward. And I just don't see that with the Colts. Rock Ya-Sin, Quentin Nelson, Kwity Paye, all those injuries, and depending on what happens tonight, could really pile up for the Colts. So I think even at the very least, even with all that talent not probably there moving forward and what happens tonight, I am still going to take the Houston plus 10 because I feel like Davis Mills showed me something against a respected coach in Belichick and some of the defensive players he has that he could still play football at an okay level. Do I think he's an automatic backup or anything, special or... No, but he should be able to be on the NFL for the very least, at least competing for a roster spot, in my opinion. And the Colts, they've usually tended to move forward on this series without Deshaun. They've won a majority of the last, games over the years. And I think the Colts, with what they have, understanding what's at stake, looking at the opportunity of playing a Houston team before playing a rested Niner team the week after, I think the Colts handle their business in a tough, physical, and brutal AFC South game. They usually happen, on a consistent basis between these two teams. Last year, both games came down. The Colts won, but it came down off of turnovers by Deshaun at the end of the game. So I could definitely see something similar happening with Davis Mills or Tyrod that gives the Colts the victory. Should be a great game, though. So that's why I like the Indianapolis Colts here to win straight up at the Houston Texans +10. The next game, the Los Angeles Rams over the New York Giants. I am taking the Los Angeles Rams here because the New York Giants are decimated with injuries. Anybody that hasn't done a survivor pool, I would take the Rams as one of the easiest, locks of the week if you haven't already done it already. I think the Rams are going to roll through this Giants team. They have the Lions and Texans, I think, coming up in the next couple weeks. So they have a very easy and nice, smooth schedule. They can just build win after having to win together to get to argue for the number 1 seed in the NFC. I think the Giants, the Giants and Rams, this was very much like last year. The Rams were on a hot roll, and everybody thought the Giants were going to lay down and get their rear ends kicked. But they had Daniel Jones, they had Barkley, and they were able to keep that game within 8 points. But there's two big differences. A, the Giants don't have those pieces going into the game, and it's just Matt Stafford, not Jared Goff, in this environment. I think that the Giants, could they compete? Maybe, if Mike Glennon gets a nice week of practice, Tony, who, again, was one of the weird media darling, or one of the weird media stories, to where he couldn't get a receiving yard, but he ended up setting a rookie franchise record for receiving yards of over 150 gained throughout the game. So I think for me, with the Giants, is that if they were all healthy, I would have probably taken the Giants on this line fairly easily. But with all the injuries they suffered to left tackle, left guard, wide receiver, tight end, basically almost all skill positions, I don't think they really have a chance to compete against a very good and very motivated Rams team that's going off a nice confidence builder themselves on Thursday night against Seattle. So that's why I like the Los Angeles Rams here -10.5 and the Los Angeles Rams straight up. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Washington Football Team. I am taking Kansas City here because I believe in Patrick Mahomes enough that he should be able to win a one-score game against Taylor Heineke in this Washington defense, which is not nearly as good as I thought it would be at the beginning of the year. Sure, they got 2 turnovers on Jameis. One was a Kelly Holcomb interception, and the other, I believe, was a strip sack by Chase Young that got picked up by his fellow Alabama teammate, De'Aaron Payne. But it's one of those ideas to where I think the Chiefs understand that they are no longer the most dominant team and the best team in the AFC. In my opinion, that should belong to 2 teams. You could debate it between the Bills and the Los Angeles Chargers. And I think the Chiefs understand also as well, they are 1-2. They are 1-2 at home, and they've usually been able to play their road games a bit more effectively. Or you just look at 2 weeks ago, they played an NFC East team. They got righted. They won 42-30. Mahomes threw for 5 touchdowns. Tyreek caught for 3. And I felt like the Chiefs kind of in the same way. They're playing a much more potentially talented front. But I feel like the other big thing as well I think you're going to have to look at is I think they'll be okay without Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If Tyreek and Travis miss the game, because I did see that Travis has a stinger and Tyreek has a knee injury. If one of them is out of the game, I'm going to change I picked the Washington, but I do not think they are going to miss any time with those guys. I think the Chiefs were going to be fully healthy. And I think Taylor Heineke makes one more mistake, which allows Mahomes to get to that 10-plus point lead. So that means that they can run the ball and run the clock out and win a interesting game of 2 and 3 football teams. One you expected in Washington, the other you didn't in Kansas City. So that's why I like the Kansas City Chiefs here, -6.5, and the Kansas City Chiefs straight up. The next game, the Minnesota Vikings over the Carolina Panthers. This game to me is fairly simple. I know the Panthers have a better defense. Cook and McCaffrey cancel each other out. The receiving core is Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. You have DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. I'll give the receiver edge to Minnesota. I will give the offensive line advantage to Minnesota. The defensive line goes to Carolina. The secondary is about a push. the kickers, I take Zane Gonzalez slightly over Greg Joseph. At the end of the day, I just think Kirk Cousins, he knows who he is. He's been playing some of the most consistent and dominant football throughout all 5 games this year. I think he outplays Sam Darnold, who throws at least 1 to 2 interceptions in the game that keeps the Vikings holding on throughout the whole way, and the Vikings went off another last-second field goal or another tough situation. Could the Panthers win this game? Absolutely. But I have enough trust in the Vikings from what I've seen offensively. Justin Jefferson's been fantastic. Alexander Madison can be a decent backup. And I just really feel like the Vikings are playing better football. And the Panthers, they don't know what they have in Sam Darnold, but he has to basically prove that he should be the long-term guy moving forward after the 5th-year option. I don't think he is right now. Let's see what keeps going on as the season goes on. So that's like the Minnesota Vikings here against the spread and straight up in a pick'em. The next game, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Baltimore Ravens. This is a really tough game to pick because I feel like for the Chargers and the Ravens, they are pretty much the same team. They really rely on analytics, a lot of running, a lot of 4th down calling, a lot of decision making for both squads. But at the end of the day, when you look at Herbert or Jackson, and nothing against, Lamar Jackson, I have the Ravens stuff behind me. I am a big Ravens fan. I do not think that Justin Lamar, if this game gets into a shootout, can outduel Justin Herbert in any which way or fashion. Do I think the Ravens have a chance to win? Absolutely, because they have the idea of the consecutive rushing streak on line. And the Chargers defense was entering the game against the Browns with the 29th ranked rushing defense. So that will be interesting, the battle of Ravens analytics with their run versus the Chargers analytics with their stopping the run or stopping other areas and making Lamar Jackson throw the football. Because the Chargers have experience going into Baltimore. Lamar Jackson's first playoff loss in Baltimore against a Phillip Rivers-led Charger team by Anthony Lynn that kept Anthony Lynn afloat for at least a year, and then now he's in Detroit and trying to do well there. I just look at this game. It's the game of the week for me. I'm going to trust Justin Herbert and his offense and his coaching over Lamar's running and Harbaugh's analytical thinking, and I think that Herbert's analytics and decision-making will outdo John Harbaugh and his, which will give the Chargers a massive win, probably the biggest win of their year besides beating Kansas City, to get to 5-1, and in my opinion, the best team in the AFC, period, end of story. So that's why I like the Los Angeles Chargers here, plus 3.5, and the LA Chargers straight up. The next game, the Arizona Cardinals over the Cleveland Browns. Very much the same thing. The Arizona Cardinals, I think, are clearly the better football team. I think Kyler, with the offensive weapons he has, and Christian Kirk, DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, and Ronaldo Moore, I think all 4 of those guys are contributing at a very good level. And I just look at the Browns and go, in this type of game where you're playing one of the top 5 defenses, or a top 10 defense in the National Football League, led by J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones, I think the Browns are going to be stuck behind the chains most of the game. And I think the Cardinals going on the road in a tough environment against the Cleveland team that is on the brink of going 500. I don't think people want to believe that just yet. They still want to be on the high of last year. But if they lose to the Cardinals, you're going to have to really start considering moving on from Cliff Kingsbury as well. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But I'm going to take Arizona. Better quarterback. More consistent. Defense is about to push. I'll take Matt Prater over who's the Browns kicker right now? I think it's not Shane McLaughlin against the Browns kicker. And I think the Cardinals just get another tough and gritty win playing up against the Cleveland Browns. So that's why I like Arizona here plus 3 and Arizona straight up. The next game, the Denver Broncos over the Las Vegas Raiders. I am taking the Denver Broncos to win this game based on the fact that the Broncos, I was surprised how many points they gave up and how many yards they gave up to Najee Harris, over 100 rushing yards. Big Ben had 2 touchdowns, about 250 yards. Chase Claypool had a monster game. I wish I didn't sit him in fantasy, but that's a whole different conversation for a different day. And I just look at the Raiders, and I just don't see a lot of heart. I saw Josh Jacobs still not 100%. Darren Waller missing consistently on throws from Derek Carr. And Derek Carr, on the last play, instead of getting the first down, he tried to go for a chunk play. Couldn't get it, and the Bears were able to win the football game. And I look at the Broncos and go, look, was the Steelers game great? No, Bridgewater got hit a lot. They had an abysmal time trying to stop Pittsburgh and Najee Harris. And you can say Josh Jacobs is about the same as Najee. But the difference is the Broncos are at home, and that defense should be able to clamp down on a Raider offense that through the first few weeks looked fantastic, but definitely now over the last couple weeks due to games against the Raiders played. I'm sorry. The Raiders played the Chargers and the Bears over the last 2 weeks. So definitely I think people are looking at the Bears and looking at the Raiders in a very different light. Moving forward, I think the Broncos win this game due to their defense, their home field advantage, which is one of the best in the league. And the Broncos win this game off a last-second field goal. I hedge my bet there because, honestly, I can see the Raiders winning. It depends on what Derek Carr shows up on Sunday afternoon. You could have the Derek Carr through 3 weeks that look like an MVP, or you could have Derek Carr the last 2 weeks that look like Derek Carr that we've known for years. So, we'll have to wait and see. But that's why I hedge my bet. So, I'll win either way. I guess unless it's a 2 1-point game, which could happen. But I'm going to take the Broncos here. More reliable, less dysfunction, less frustration. And they're at home, which is a big thing at Mile High. So, that's why I like Denver here to win straight up at the Las Vegas Raiders +3. Then the next game, the Dallas Cowboys over the New England Patriots. I am taking the Dallas Cowboys to win this game based on the fact that I believe right now they are the 4th best team in the NFC behind the Arizona Cardinals, Los Angeles Rams, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Dallas is going into New England to where they will have some revenge for what happened in 2019, to where that was the Amari Cooper game, where Tom Brady was able to outplay Dak by a little bit because Amari Cooper decided to leave the game for injury evaluation. This time around, though, it's a different Cowboys team altogether and a Patriot team that is really fighting on the rock of relevancy and importance, and beating the Cowboys will put them right back in that consistent conversation. I don't think it is going to happen. I think the Cowboys are too powered up offensively, too powered up defensively. The offensive line for the Patriots was ravaged by COVID cases, so we'll have to see how long those individuals are still going to have to be out. I at least know Trent Brown's going to be out for a few weeks. They still don't have Rob Gronkowski. No, I'm sorry. Wrong thing. I was thinking Patriots screwed up. When you look at the Cowboys, they don't have Lyle Collins still, DeMarcus Lawrence. And I look at this Cowboy team and say, they've done exactly what everything is wanted to ask. And I think for the Patriots, it's pretty simple. Let Dak beat us with his arm. True, we have Amari and CD, but after that, everybody else is just a guy, and you have Blake Jarwin and tight end. So the Pats, if they can keep that kind of game, they could win it. But I just feel like with the Cowboys, with the offensive firepower, with Dan Quinn actually looking solid at his job as a defensive coordinator, I think they go into New England and put a stomping on the Pats to, I believe, put them in their first home game losing streak to start a year in franchise history. I don't know if they've ever done that. If somebody could look it up for me, that'd be great. But I think it gets done with Dallas going in there and winning the game convincingly by at least 10 points. So that's why I like Dallas here, -3.5, and Dallas straight up. And then the final 2 games, the Pittsburgh Steelers over the Seattle Seahawks. I am taking Pittsburgh because Russell Wilson is out. I thought Geno Smith played okay in the second half against the Rams, but Geno ended up throwing that pick at the end, which didn't surprise a lot of people. And I just look at the Steelers. They got their momentum back. They're playing one of the worst defenses, if not the worst defense, in the entire National Football League. Seattle can't stop the run at all. And I just think Ben going up against Geno might make some good plays and might make the Seahawks hang around. But honestly, if you want my honest opinion about the Seahawks, they are essentially the NFC version of the Kansas City Chiefs. Both 2-3. Both have great Super Bowl winning quarterbacks as their leader. 2 coaches that are heralded on their specific side of the football. Andy for his offense, Pete for his defense. And it just seems like every week that weakness of the defense comes to bite them in the end. And Russell and Patrick try to play as much hero ball or make improvisation. I think I will give Russ this credit this year before, obviously everybody knows Russell Wilson's going to be out at least 4 weeks with a partially or a torn tendon in his right middle finger, which is the ball he used to grasp the ball. And his 149 consecutive start streak ends on Sunday. He could have been number 5, or I believe by getting to 150. So, to get back to the game, I think Pittsburgh, their defensive line is going to smother the Seattle offensive line. I think Geno is going to be put in situations he's not used to or he hasn't been in for a very long time. And I think the Steelers take advantage of that with their defense and Najee and very quick slants, out route screens from Ben Roethlisberger to all his weapons. And I think the Steelers win in a handily and convincing manner. So that's why I like Pittsburgh here, -4, and Pittsburgh straight up. And finally, the Monday Night Football game, the Buffalo Bills over the Tennessee Titans. I am taking Buffalo because the Buffalo Bills are the best team in the AFC. They have been on a roll, and there's extra motivation for this game. Remember last year in the rare Tuesday night game to end, I believe week 6 or 7, the Titans played the Bills, and that was the game where Derrick Henry just ran wild on them. Obviously, the most famous play of that game was also Derrick Henry just stiff-arming Josh Norman completely out of the play, which I thought was really impressive. But at the end of the day, they're playing a Bills team that just throttled the Chiefs in a convincing way. I know the Bills aren't, a full team, or I know the Titans haven't been that great, where I just look at the Bills and go, better coach, better quarterback. Titans have a better running game, but the defense, for a defense to be as dominating as they've been and to only give up at most 24, and I believe that was week 1, when they gave the 24 to Pittsburgh, that is really impressive by the Bills' defensive staff. I think the Bills' offense looks consistent. They have weapons everywhere with Dawson Knox, Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, Stephon Diggs, the other tight end, number 89. I forget what his name is. Someone can tell me, that'd be great. You have Zach and Devin doing okay as a duo where they're splitting carries. And I just think also the Bills are going to be motivated. The Bills know that, just like Josh Allen said after the game, it's only week 5, but they're going to remember last year when most of those guys were there, and they're going to tell them that we have a special receipt, just like with Kansas City. We hope to send you when we are done this game. We beat the Titans in a pretty dominating fashion. So that's all I like. Buffalo -3.5 and Buffalo straight up. And that is it. So those are my picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page to see other great prognosticators such as Half Moon's Picks, Gio Knows, Keith Bailey, Andrew Warren, Bridgewater's Finest, Sports Fan Entertainment with MJ. All those guys and gals that make predictions just like I do every single week. Please give their channels a listen, a like, and a subscription. And that is it. So until next week, where we will have the second week of the bye season, it is the first short week. I am excited but nervous. But until next time, good luck to all players, coaches, fantasy team owners, and fellow prognosticators. And until next week, this is Matt the NFL Fanatic signing off. Until next time, so long.